The first gust hit Jeff Bennett's chest like a shove as he rolled onto County 14, and he leaned into it without thinking, shoulders loose, hands steady, eyes scanning the black ribbon of road ahead. 48 years old, built like a weathered fence post, and just as stubborn. He rode point for night watch because no one else read darkness like he did. His jaw carried a ropey white scar that pulled when he frowned, and tonight it stayed tugged. Under his gloves and jacket sleeves, sun-faded military ink crawled down both forearms. Unit numbers, dates, the kind of memories that never stayed buried no matter how many winters passed. His leather cut was clean in the way old tools were clean. Not polished, just worn smooth by rain, road grit, and use. Behind him, 20 bikes hummed in disciplined formation, staggered pairs eating up miles of empty highway where the county forgot to install enough lights and everyone else forgot to care. Night Watch rode these roads because somebody had to after office hours. They weren't an outlaw club and weren't trying to look like one. Their runs were logged, their radios were tagged. Half their money came from charity rides and the other half from people sliding folded bills into donation jars at diners and gas stations. On Friday nights, they escorted nurses and pharmacy clerks home with cash in their purses. After storms, they checked low crossings before dawn and put up makeshift barricades when county crews were still drinking coffee. When food banks got bulk donations, but no trucks, Night Watch hauled pallets in saddlebags and utility trailers. If official services closed at 5, the riders clocked in after dark. Tonight's run looked simple on paper and ugly in reality. 3 unlit miles near Miller's Creek had flooded twice already this season. The volunteer doctor, riding mid-pack in borrowed rain gear, had to reach Pine Ridge Clinic before the backup generator coughed its last gallon dry. Inside the clinic, one ward was already on emergency power. Elderly patients with oxygen support, a diabetic teenager in observation, 2 post-op recoveries. Nobody could safely transfer on short notice. If the lights went out and systems failed, people wouldn't die in a dramatic blaze. They'd fade in beeps and silence, one preventable thing at a time. Jeff didn't do panic and didn't do speeches. He just called the route, checked each rider's fuel, and put himself where trouble would reach first. Cold worked under every seam. Wind dragged dead leaves in frantic circles across the asphalt. In his mirror, he saw helmet visors reflecting white from their flood lamps, saw the steady spacing that meant his crew was alert and with him. On comms, Murphy gave a position check from tail. Kira answered from left flank. Doc Alvarez, the volunteer they were escorting, came through tight-voiced but controlled, saying she was good. Jeff acknowledged each with clipped syllables. He didn't waste radio air. They passed the old feed mill and dropped toward the blind stretch by Miller's Creek, where road shoulders narrowed and reeds crowded the culverts in thick brown walls. A rusted guardrail tracked the curve like a tired promise. Jeff's headlight carved a pale tunnel through blowing mist, and the world shrank to lane markings, reflective posts, and the constant low thunder of engines. He smelled wet earth, exhaust, and the metallic cold that came before freezing. Then something exploded out of the dark directly into his beam. A dog, medium-large, shepherd mix maybe, coat caked in mud so thick it looked painted. Jeff's right hand feathered the brake, left boot ready, body centered. The dog didn't do what animals usually did when confronted by 20 motorcycles and floodlights. It didn't bolt across and disappear. It planted itself in the lane, chest heaving, eyes bright and fixed on him, and barked once. Sharp, deliberate, a command more than a warning. Before Jeff could swear, it spun and sprinted toward the shoulder, then stopped and looked back. He raised a fist, and 20 bikes responded, as one organism, Brake lights blooming red, engines stepping down, riders drifting to controlled stops with inches to spare. No horn blast, no skid chaos, just practiced discipline and the wind. The dog ran again, this time down toward a culvert, choked with reeds. It raced in frantic loops between the ditch and the road, whining, barking once more, then darting back as if pulling an invisible line tied to Jeff's chest. Jeff killed his engine and heard, beneath wind and ticking metal, a faint new sound. Water knocking against something hollow. "Lights down there," he called. Several riders swung auxiliary beams toward the ditch. At first it looked like nothing but black water, bent grass, and reflective trash. Then the angle changed and details snapped into place. Fresh skid marks gouged through soft shoulder mud, two bright lines that left the pavement, crossed the grass in a violent arc, and vanished over the broken section of guardrail. Jeff was moving before anyone answered. Boots slid in wet clay as he climbed down, one hand on the rail stub, another on a flashlight. The smell hit him halfway, gasoline, radiator steam, creek rot. 10 feet below the road, half submerged and twisted onto its roofline, a minivan lay pinned against concrete and reeds, rear wheels still turning in slow, desperate circles. One taillight blinked in and out underwater like a failing signal. "Vehicle in ditch," Jeff shouted. 2, maybe more. Night watch moved on instinct. Riders dismounted, grabbed trauma kits and glass punches, spread lights to flood the embankment. Somebody was already on 911 before Jeff asked. The dog scrambled down beside him, paws slipping, then jammed itself against the van's side, whining low and urgent. Through shattered side glass, Jeff saw a woman in the front, seatbelt cinched hard across her torso, head lolling against the spiderweb of cracked window. Blood streaked from her temple into her hairline. In the rear, upside down because the van had rolled, a little girl hung in a car seat, straps biting into her shoulders, face pale and wet with tears. Her eyes were open too wide, fixed on nothing. Water pushed in through a split seam at the rear hatch and climbed inch by inch over spilled papers, a backpack, a shoe. "I see one adult female, one pediatric," Jeff called, voice flat to stay useful. "Both trapped, water rising." On the roadside above, engines idled and hazard lights flashed in red pulses across reeds and mud. The dog barked toward the road, then back at Jeff, then scratched frantically at the van's rear quarter panel as if it could dig them free. Dispatch came over speaker from Murphy's phone, tinny and indifferent in the night air. "Units are committed. Closest ambulance 40 minutes out. Fire rescue delayed. No diver available at this time. Do not enter unstable vehicle. Maintain scene safety." Jeff stared at the van as water licked higher against the window seam. 40 minutes was a sentence. "Negative on waiting," he muttered, then keyed his radio. "All riders, we're in rescue mode now. Full traffic control. I need lane blocks both directions before someone crests this bend and plows through us." Kira and Santos fired bikes and took positions uphill and down road, strobes flashing blue-white. 2 more riders grabbed flare packs and sprinted upstream along the shoulder, where visibility vanished around the curve. Red fire hissed into life, staining the mist like emergency dawn. Murphy stayed on dispatch, pressing for upgraded priority, location confirmation, anything faster than procedure. A tanker truck groaned past in the far lane, slowing only enough to spray them with mist and grit. Jeff climbed onto the van's exposed undercarriage, boots searching for purchase. Metal shifted with a sickening creak. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" he shouted through broken glass. No answer. The child made a thin sound, then another, then stopped, lips trembling. That silence scared him more than screaming. He ripped open a saddlebag and pulled out tie-down straps, ratcheting cargo webbing they used for supply pallets. Need anchors, he barked. Two riders fed him line and looped the far ends around the remaining guardrail posts above. Crude, not pretty, but enough to make a safety tether if the mud let go and the van slid deeper into the culvert. Traffic kept coming, a relentless hiss of tires on wet asphalt. Jeff climbed back up once to wave both arms at an approaching pickup, helmet light strobing directly through its windshield. The driver looked at him, expression blank and hard, then accelerated through the channel between flares, engine roaring, never touching the brake. Mud sprayed Jeff to the waist. Unbelievable, someone snapped over comms. Forget him, Jeff said. We are the help. Rider Nate, smallest in the crew and former volunteer EMT, wriggled through the fractured rear hatch opening as Jeff and another rider held the frame from shifting. Nate lay half inside the inverted cabin, one arm braced against a seat base, gloved fingers checking the girl's airway and neck position without forcing movement. She's breathing, he called. Rapid, shallow. She's cold, trying to keep her aligned. Talk to her, Jeff said. Nate's voice softened immediately. Hey, kiddo. You're doing great. My name's Nate. I'm right here with you. I need you to look at my glove, okay? That's it. Good. Water reached the roofline, now effectively the van's floor, and slid around Nate's elbow in dark swirls. Fuel stink thickened until it coated the tongue. Someone passed down an absorbent pad roll from a spill kit, and Jeff jammed strips around a crack to slow the inflow. It barely helped. He checked the woman next. Pulse present, thready, breathing ragged. No obvious chest collapse, but a shoulder looked wrong and she flinched at abdominal touch, even unconscious. He wanted her on a backboard, warm, monitored, moving. Instead, she was trapped in a metal cage while bureaucracy measured miles and availability charts. A gust shoved hard across the ditch, and with it came a scatter of loose papers floating from beneath the dash, pasted by water and blood against the interior. Jeff reached through the cracked side opening and pulled what he could before the creek took them. Most were soaked blank. One brown courthouse envelope stayed mostly intact, wedged in a coat pocket near the woman's hip. He worked it free and handed it to Murphy on the bank. Murphy peeled it open under flashlight, lips tightening as he skimmed. Emergency protection petition, he said. Denied yesterday. Insufficient, immediate threat documentation. He held up another damp form stamped in blue ink from that morning. Intake assessment. Women's shelter. County line location blacked out by smears, but still legible enough. The date was today. This woman had asked for help twice in 24 hours and was now upside down in a flooding ditch with her daughter. Jeff looked from the paperwork to the child hanging silent in straps, then up toward the road where headlights kept appearing, anonymous and fast. The night rearranged itself inside him. This wasn't just weather and bad luck and a missed curve. This was what happened when danger knocked on official doors and got told to come back with better evidence. Dispatch crackled again. Advise patient status. Repeat. Do not attempt extrication without fire support. Units en route. Patient status is running out of road, Jeff shot back, then bit it off before rage stole time. He turned to his riders, faces lit harshly by strobes and flood lamps, rain beating on visors and beards and jacket collars. These were mechanics, carpenters, nurses, 2 veterans, a school custodian, 1 retired postal worker with arthritic hands that still never shook in a crisis. None of them were waiting for permission to care. Kira, keep that north lane shut tight, Jeff ordered. Sanos, rotate flares before they burn down. Murphy, stay on dispatch until they can't ignore us. Nate, keep talking to her no matter what. I need straps doubled on that rail and a clean blanket warmed by exhaust heat for when we pull the kid. He glanced once at Dr. Alvarez, the clinic volunteer who had stepped off her bike, and was now kneeling beside an open med kit, prepping oxygen tubing and thermal wraps with practice speed. Their original mission, generator, ward, waiting patients, still mattered. Every minute here pushed those people closer to darkness, but this ditch had become the immediate edge where life tipped or held. Jeff shoved the envelope inside his jacket, close and dry. Evidence, story, proof that somebody had seen this woman coming and stamped her fear in triplicate. The dog scrambled up onto the bank, then back down again, unable to settle, eyes never leaving the van. Mud streaked his muzzle. His ribs showed with every breath. He pressed against Jeff's leg once, hard, then faced the road, and let out a low growl each time headlights rounded the bend. Jeff put a hand briefly on the dog's neck, felt muscle and tremor and stubborn heat under soaked fur. "Good boy," he said, voice rough. Above them, flares burned red against the October wind. Below, creek water kept climbing. And between those two facts, Jeff Bennett tightened the makeshift harness around his waist and prepared to go back into the glass. He dropped back down the embankment, clipped one end of the strap harness to the guardrail line, and tested it with his full weight. The webbing groaned, held, and bit into his hips. Good enough for one bad decision. "On 3, Jeff said. "I go in. You hold tension. If she shifts, I come out with the kid first." "Copy," Murphy called from above. Nate braced himself deeper inside the rear opening to make room. "Watch the frame edge. It's peeling." Jeff shoved his left arm through the jagged hatch, forearm scraping over teeth of safety glass and bent metal. His jacket sleeve snagged and tore with a wet rip. He ignored it, reached for the latch housing with his right hand, and found nothing but warped plastic and water pressure. The hatch wouldn't open farther. It was already as open as it would ever get. "Window's the way," he grunted. He pulled back, took the spring-loaded glass punch from his vest, and hammered the lower corner of what used to be the rear side window. First strike cracked. Second strike popped a fist-sized hole. On the third, the panel gave up and collapsed inward in cubes and knives, spilling a surge of creek water over his gloves. The van lurched a few inches lower. Above, somebody swore. The straps snapped tight against Jeff's waist as the team hauled reflexively to keep him from sliding with it. "Hold!" he barked. "Don't reef it or we tear the anchor." Nate coughed as muddy water slapped his chest. "Kid's still breathing. She's colder." Jeff pushed the opening wider with his forearm and shoulder, then threaded himself halfway inside. Upside-down seat legs and loose debris made a steel maze. He could see the little girl now in full, hanging inverted in her car seat, eyes open but distant, lips turning a dangerous shade toward gray. Her hair drifted in the water like dark grass. A stuffed fox bobbed against the roof panel beneath her. "Hey, sweetheart," Jeff said, keeping his voice low and level. "My name's Jeff. We're getting you out. I need you to keep looking at Nate, okay? You just keep looking at him." No response. Her pupils tracked sluggishly to Nate's glove, then away. Dr. Alvarez slid down beside the opening, knees in mud, med kit clipped to a strap over her shoulder. "If she's that cold, we need her dry and horizontal now," she said. "Every minute upside down increases pressure, risk, and shock." "Working it," Jeff said. He reached for the car seat buckle, found it twisted under tension from the rollover, and couldn't depress the release with one hand. He shifted his weight, got both thumbs onto it, and pushed hard. It clicked halfway, then jammed. "Buckle's fouled. Need cutter." Nate handed him trauma shears. Jeff sawed through one shoulder strap, then the other, careful not to jerk her neck. Water climbed another inch. His harness line jerked as the van settled again with a sucking sound from the mud. "Jeff!" Kira's voice crackled over radio, loud with wind. Southbound lane is stacking up. I got one sedan trying to creep around flares. Plant the bike broadside if you have to, he said. Nobody comes through. Already did. On the shoulder above, engines idled. Horns blared once, and then cut out when riders advanced with flashlights and hard stares. Night Watch had no badges, but 20 motorcycles in deliberate formation made its own kind of authority. Jeff slid one arm behind the girl's shoulders and one under her knees. Nate, on my count, stabilize C-spine and guide her through. Don't let her catch the frame. Ready? 3, 2, now. They moved together in a slow, ugly pull. The girl's body came free from the seat with a soft gasp, then a weak cry as blood shifted. Jeff passed her to Nate through shattered metal. Nate pivoted and lifted her upward where Dr. Alvarez and another rider took her, wrapped her in the pre-warmed blanket, and climbed to the bank in a crouched relay. "She's out!" someone yelled. A ripple of sound went through the riders, not cheering, just that involuntary release people make when one impossible piece finally happens. Jeff didn't look up. One out wasn't both out. He forced himself deeper toward the front cabin. The woman's seatbelt had locked hard across her torso, pinning her at an angle that kept her airway barely clear above the waterline. Her face was chalk white under blood and creek muck. The shoulder nearest him sat too low in the socket. Her breath hitched irregularly, like a motor trying to catch. "Ma'am, if you can hear me, squeeze my hand." Nothing. He got fingers under the belt tongue and tried to release it. Jammed. He pulled the belt webbing, gave slack, tried again. Nothing. The rollover had torqued the latch plate against the frame. "Nate, cutta." Nate, dripping and shivering but steady, passed a heavier strap knife back through the opening and braced Jeff's shoulder while he worked the blade between belt and coat. Above them, Murphy's voice carried down from the road as he argued with dispatch, all restraint burned off. "I don't need another script. I need units. Pediatric hypothermia and trapped adult with fuel leak. Mile marker is unmarked south of old feed mill because your sign got knocked out in spring and never replaced. I'm sending GPS pin every 60 seconds. Confirm you received it." Static. Then the same calm dispatcher tone, flattened by headset protocol. "Received. Remain at safe distance." Murphy laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Safe distance ended 30 minutes ago." Jeff sliced through the seatbelt at last. The woman slumped immediately, dead weight shifting toward the roofline water. He hooked an arm under her chest to keep her face clear. "Got her loose. Need pull team." 4 riders dropped to the ditch edge with another strap looped into a chest sling. They fed it in, Jeff worked it under her arms, and they began a coordinated drag toward the rear opening, inch by inch. Every move scraped her against bent console plastic and raining glass. Jeff kept her head from striking metal with his forearm and took the hits himself. Halfway there, the van shuddered violently. Mud released beneath one wheel, and the whole body rolled another few degrees toward the creek channel. Water surged over Jeff's thighs and slammed him into the seat frame. His tether line snapped taut, wrenching his hips. "Out! Out! Out!" someone shouted. "No!" Jeff roared back. "Hold line! Keep tension!" If they all bailed now, she'd drown before anyone reached her again. He shoved her forward through the opening as the riders hauled from above. For one hanging second, her coat snagged on a shard of frame. Jeff ripped the fabric free with both hands, skinning his knuckles to blood beneath his gloves, and she slid out onto waiting arms. They hauled her up the bank like a human stretcher team, careful but fast, while Jeff scrambled after, boots slipping in clay, straps still clipped to his waist like an umbilical line to the wreck below. At the top, Dr. Alvarez had the girl cocooned in 2 blankets, oxygen mask tiny on her face, pulse ox clipped to a finger, too small for it. The reading blinked erratically. Nate knelt beside them, talking continuously, in a gentle monotone about anything except fear. His old dog, the color of sunrise. How brave she was doing. Her eyes fluttered closed. "Keep her awake," Dr. Alvarez ordered. "No sleeping yet, honey. Stay with us." The woman lay on a tarp under floodlights while Alvarez checked airway, pupils, and abdominal tenderness. She grimaced weakly when Alvarez palpated the left side. "Possible internal bleed," the doctor said quietly to Jeff. "Definite shoulder dislocation. Probable concussion. She needs transport now. Not in 40 minutes. Now." Jeff stared at the road where flares guttered in wind and diesel mist drifted low across beams. "Murphy," he called. "What's the new ETA?" Murphy covered his phone, jaw tight. "Best case 32. They're still trying to pull fire from 2 counties over." 32. Maybe less, maybe more. All of it too long. "Then we keep them alive for 32, Jeff said. "And we keep this scene locked." The night pressed harder, as if offended they were still standing. Rain started as a fine slant that made the asphalt shine like black glass. Flares hissed lower. Santos swapped them one by one with gloved speed while semis thundered past inches from his safety cone line. One flare tipped and rolled toward dry grass. He stomped it out, relit another, and kept moving. Kira radioed that an impatient driver had stepped out 2 cars back and was filming them, narrating loudly about bikers blocking public roads. She ignored him until he tried walking toward the ditch with his phone light up. "I turned him around," she said. "Politely once, less politely twice." "Keep him back," Jeff replied. "No faces on patients." At the improvised treatment area, the girl trembled in waves despite blankets and body heat from 2 kneeling riders shielding her from wind. Dr. Alvarez started warm IV fluids from her emergency kit, limited supply meant for clinic runs, not flood rescues. She looked up once at Jeff, rain dripping off her visor brim. "That was my last pediatric line set," she said. "Not accusation. Fact." Jeff nodded. Every resource spent here was a resource not reaching Pine Ridge. His radio chirped again, this time the clinic nurse, voice crackling with static and generator hum. "Night watch, this is Pine Ridge. Status check on doctor. Alvarez escort?" Jeff hesitated only half a beat. "Delayed by active rescue at Miller's Creek. How much generator left?" 45 minutes if we cut non-essential. Maybe an hour?" He glanced at Alvarez working chest rise counts with lips pressed tight. "We're doing what we can," he said. On the far shoulder, Murphy crouched over the courthouse envelope under a plastic evidence sleeve from the med kit. He photographed each page with timestamp enabled, then shot copies to a secure club drive they used for incident logs. Jeff knelt beside him long enough to read the denial language himself. No prior incident report within 30 days. Petitioner advised to seek mediation resources. The shelter form listed mother and child intake priority high risk, then a handwritten note, left before placement, reported being followed. The words settled like iron in Jeff's gut. "Get clear images of signatures and date stamps," Jeff said. "And the case number." "Already done." Traffic noise swelled, then dipped. A dark pickup eased around the curve and slowed more than necessary at the flare line. Its headlights washed across the ditch, then across the tarp where the woman lay. The dog, mud-caked shepherd mix, still refusing distance, snapped upright from beside the girl and planted himself between the pickup and the patients, hackles raised, a low rumble vibrating through his chest. The pickup idled for 3 long seconds. "Kira," Jeff said, voice gone flat. "Plate." She swung her bar light toward the truck. The driver shielded his face with a forearm and rolled forward before she could get a clean read, tires whispering off into rain. "Couldn't lock it," she said. "Too much mud on rear." Jeff watched taillights vanish and felt the air change around the dog. Ranger, because that was what Nate had started calling him without thinking and everyone had adopted instantly, didn't settle afterward. He paced a tight line from road edge to woman, eyes fixed on every approaching beam. "Murphy," Jeff said. "Note possible surveillance vehicle. Dark pickup, no stop, slowed at scene." "Logged." The complications stacked like wet lumber. One lane closure was failing because traffic volume was rising with shift change. 2 riders were nearing fuel reserve from idling as blockers. Nate's hands had started to shake from cold, and Jeff rotated him out for 5 minutes by force. Dispatch finally patched through a county sergeant who sounded more awake than the earlier operator, but no less trapped by logistics. "Bennett, I've got deputies 10 out, EMS still 25 minimum. You cannot transport these patients yourselves." Jeff looked at the woman's breathing pattern, shallow, uneven, and the girl's color under blanket edges. "Watch us," he said, and ended the call. He didn't mean they'd throw both patients on bikes. Nobody was that reckless. But he meant he was done waiting passively inside other people's timelines. He started assigning contingencies. If EMS missed next ETA, they'd commandeer the clinic supply van from 2 miles back. If roads closed, they'd route gravel farm tracks. If law enforcement arrived and tried to separate mother, child, and dog without context, everything would be documented on camera before anyone moved. And still, the woman did not wake. It happened during a lull between sirens that weren't here and headlights that wouldn't stop. Jeff was kneeling at her shoulder, keeping manual stabilization, while Alvarez checked blood pressure for the 4th time. Rain had eased to mist. The creek kept talking in the dark below. Ranger stood 3 feet away, rigid, eyes on the curve. The woman's eyelids fluttered once, twice. Her fingers twitched against the tarp. "Ma'am?" Alvarez leaned closer. "You're safe right now. Can you tell me your name?" Her eyes opened a slit, unfocused, then snapped toward Jeff as if she recognized the silhouette from inside the wreck. She grabbed his wrist with startling force, nails digging through wet leather. Jeff bent down. "I'm here." Her mouth worked around cracked breaths. 3 words came out raw as torn paper. "He found us." Then her grip went slack and she slid back under. No one spoke for a full second. Even traffic seemed to recede. Ranger swung instantly toward the roadway and bared his teeth at a passing pair of headlights, growled deep enough that 2 nearby riders turned at the sound. Jeff felt the message land clean and cold. This scene was no longer only a crash site. It was an active threat perimeter. "Murphy," he said, already reaching for his radio. "New priority, potential domestic violence pursuit. Victim verbalized, 'He found us.' Log exact quote with timestamp." "Logged." "Put in a direct call to Sergeant Hall, not dispatch Q. Tell him we need deputy on scene for stalking report before transfer. Mandatory." "On it." Jeff keyed a different channel, one he used for Club Emergency Tree. "Patch me to Lena." A click, then a sleepy but sharp older woman answered over speaker, retired medic Lena Pike, Night Watch's unofficial medical backstop. "Jeff, it's 2 in the... Need you awake now. Female. Probable internal injuries. Pediatric hypothermia. Possible predator in area. We need destination guidance and intake protection." Lena didn't waste a breath. "You still in county?" "At Miller's Creek." Do not send them to nearest ER under legal names if there's pursuit. Call Aisha at Safe Harbor Legal. I'll text her direct. Keep mother and child together. Keep the dog if the kid's bonded, reduces panic. Record every handoff. Copy. Jeff switched channels again. Asha Patel. If you're up, answer. Miracle of bad nights, she answered on second ring, voice clipped and alert. Legal aid attorney, partnered with the Shelter Network, had helped Night Watch twice before when paperwork threatened to undo safety. Bennett? Need emergency protective intake. Adult female and child pulled from rollover. Possible stalking offender at scene. Prior petition denied. We have documents in hand and body cam footage. Do not surrender original paperwork, Asha said immediately. Photograph front and back. Preserve chain of custody. Request deputy incident number on camera. I can open secure placement in neighboring county if hospital social work flags risk. Do it. He ended the call and stood, rain running off his cut, jaw scar pulled tight. All riders listen up, he said over open comms, voice carrying across engines and wind. This is now protective rescue. Assume hostile interest in patients. Helmet cams on, continuous record. Nobody engages unknown vehicles alone. Any plate, any face, you capture it. One by one, acknowledgments clicked in his ear. Kira, Santos, Titan perimeter. Bikes angled to block line of sight to patients from road. Copy. Murphy, start evidence log, envelope, shelter form, victim statement, suspicious pickup pass, timestamp everything. Already rolling, he turned to Dr. Alvarez. Clinic run is delayed. I know what that means. She met his eyes, then looked at the girl clutching Ranger's soaked fur with weak fingers for the first time. It means I'm exactly where I need to be for the next 10 minutes, she said. I'll call Pine Ridge and I'll walk them through power rationing remotely. Jeff nodded once, grateful and grim. Night Watch convoy route is rerouted, he said to the whole team. No straight run to clinic. We escort this family and evidence as one package until secure handoff. No splits until deputy logs threat and EMS confirms destination lock. Around him, riders adjusted positions without argument, engines turning in coordinated arcs until the treatment tarp sat inside a ring of steel, light, and witnesses. Down in the ditch, the ruined minivan settled another inch and went still. Up on the road, Ranger faced the dark curve and waited, every muscle saying the same thing the woman had said. He found us. Not tonight, Jeff thought, and keyed his mic for the incoming sirens. The sirens split into two tones as they got closer, high county wail and lower volunteer rig moan. But when the lights finally cut through the curve, only sheriff cruisers came through the flare gate. No ambulance. Sergeant Hall climbed out first, rain jacket half-zipped, hat shoved back, eyes already taking inventory, in one sweep. Ditch, flipped van, tarp, child, ring of bikes, armed-looking men in wet leather. Deputy Weller came out on the passenger side with one hand near his holster, and the other on a flashlight he kept too high, too jittery. "Who's Bennett?" Hall shouted. Jeff raised a hand. "Here. 2 patients extracted, adult female and pediatric hypothermia. Possible stalking threat. We need your incident number logged before transport." Hall's jaw flexed. Dispatch also got calls saying a motorcycle group forced a vehicle off the road and is now refusing EMS access. Jeff stared at him a beat, then laughed once from pure disbelief. "That's your escalation call? Look down the bank." Hall did. Even from the shoulder, the broken guardrail and rolled minivan told the truth better than any statement. Still, procedure was sticky, and bad information had already landed first. Weller stepped forward. "Everyone keep hands visible." We'll separate witnesses one at a time. No, Jeff said flat. You separate this scene, and we lose Chain. Weller stiffened. You giving orders now? Tonight? Yeah, Murphy muttered under his breath. Hall held up a hand before it could tip. Enough. Nobody's getting cuffed if nobody makes me. He turned to Jeff. You said threat? Jeff nodded toward Murphy, who already had his phone up with time-stamped images. Courthouse, denial petition, shelter intake from this morning. Victim regained consciousness and said, quote, he found us. Dark pickup did a slow pass, no contact, no plate lock first time. Ranger growled right then, low and immediate, head snapping toward the curve. A pickup rounded into view, lights dimmed to parking lamps. Same shape, same dark body. It slowed at the outer flare, then rolled on when Kira angled her bike broadside and hit him with full white beam. Weller cursed. Plate? Still mudded, Kira called. Couldn't read. Hall keyed his shoulder mic, voice clipped. All units be advised, possible repeat vehicle surveilling active, crash rescue at County 14, Miller's Creek. Need traffic assist and plate intercept. Static answered him. Then, negative resources. The night kept shrinking. If the Predator's false call stuck, Jeff knew exactly what happened next. Deputies defaulted to nearest kin assumptions, hospital intake under legal names, a waiting room, a chart, a phone call for family notification, and a man who had already found them once walking through automatic doors like he belonged there. Everything they had built in rain and mud would dissolve into paperwork. Hall crouched by the child long enough to see the oxygen line and hear Dr. Alvarez counting breaths. He looked less suspicious after that, more tired. Where's EMS? Murphy checked dispatch again, listened, swore. Now 21. They got rerouted around a jackknifed feed truck. Jeff looked up at the black sky and nodded like he expected betrayal from it too. The setback hit in pieces, not one dramatic blow. First came the sedan. A silver compact crested the hill too fast, brakes locking late on wet pavement. Santos saw it and swung his bike harder across the lane to force a stop. The car hydroplaned anyway, kissed his crash bar, and clipped him into the shoulder with a metal crack that cut through every other sound. Santos went down hard, helmet striking asphalt. His bike spun, showering sparks, and took out 2 cones and a flare box as it slid. "Ride her down! Ride her down!" Kira yelled. Jeff ran before he thought, boots hammering road. Santos was conscious, swearing in 3 languages, which was good. His right leg was bent where it shouldn't be, which wasn't. Weller started toward him, then froze between duties when Hall barked for him to hold perimeter. The sedan driver stumbled out shaking, shouting, "I didn't see! There were lights everywhere!" "Sit on the guardrail and don't move," Kira snapped, already kneeling by Santos with gloves on. Now they had a 3rd patient. Second piece, the clinic call. Dr. Alvarez's radio chirped with Pine Ridge's internal channel, and the nurse on the other end wasn't trying to sound calm anymore. "Doctor, generator just dropped below threshold. We lost 1 monitor bank. We're handbagging in Ward B. Mr. Larkin desatted to 73, then came up. We need you." Alvarez closed her eyes once, just once, and answered with brutal precision. "Move oxygen-dependent patients to hallway sockets by Station 2. Shut every non-essential circuit. Rotate manual ventilation in 2-minute shifts. Do not let one person fatigue. I'll stay on open line." Her voice didn't shake. Her left hand did. Third piece, the ambulance that finally arrived had 1 crew, 1 stretcher immediately available, and strict triage protocol. Adult female with possible internal bleed took priority. Pediatric could ride bench with medic if stable. Injured biker with obvious fracture. Wait for 2nd unit. Unknown ETA. Santos heard it and tried to sit up. "Don't burn transport on me," he hissed through clenched teeth. "I can wait." "You're not voting with a tib-fib, man," Nate said, pinning him gently. "I said I can wait." He probably could. He also might bleed internally under all that leather and pride. No one had enough certainty to make this clean. Then Hall got a return ping from dispatch on the crashed minivan registration. "Registered owner, Caleb Trent," he read. "Emergency contact listed as spouse, same name as patient probable, Lily Trent." Jeff felt his stomach drop. "Do not call that contact." Hall looked up. Auto notification may already have gone through when the plate was entered. There it was, the failure that couldn't be unwound. Somewhere, a phone had lit up with location, breadcrumbs, and incident type. The man who found us now had an official invitation. Jeff turned away 2 steps and braced both hands on his knees, rain running off his gloves in thin streams. For the first time all night, doubt hit him clean. He'd split the convoy, delayed a clinic, added a rider casualty, and still maybe delivered this woman back to the person she was fleeing, just with better lighting. Murphy came beside him without speaking for a long second. Then, "We still got footage. We still got witness count. We're not done." Jeff nodded but didn't answer. Not done wasn't the same as winning. Dr. Maria Alvarez had spent years telling families there was no perfect choice, only the least deadly one available in the minute you had. She had always hated how true that sounded. She knelt between 2 worlds now. A hypothermic child gripping wet dog fur like a lifeline, and a radio in her ear carrying the thin, exhausted breaths of patients, miles away, losing power by degrees. Her gloves were tacky with mud and blood. Her visor was fogged at the edges. Her chest hurt in that old, familiar way that came when duty turned into arithmetic. 1 to save, 1 to fail. Not because you didn't care, because physics and time were cruel and unapologetic. "Maria?" the Pine Ridge nurse said in her earpiece, voice cracking. "Are you still there?" "I'm here," she said, adjusting the girl's blanket, listening to crackles from failing equipment in the background. "Count respirations out loud for me." Out. No shortcuts. The child's name was still unknown. Her tiny fingers had latched onto Ranger's scruff and would not let go. Each time headlights swept the shoulder, her pulse jumped under Maria's fingertips. Trauma memory, Maria thought, before language even catches up. She knew that pattern too well. In her 2nd year of residency, she had discharged a woman with bruises hidden under a turtleneck because the chart had no objective immediate threat, because the attending said they couldn't hold without cause, because hospital legal had words for every risk except the one waiting in the parking lot. The woman was dead 48 hours later. Maria kept the case file in a drawer she never opened and never threw away. That was when she stopped believing protocol was neutral. Now Jeff stood 10 feet away under Strobe's bill, shoulders hunched against wind and responsibility, looking older than when the night started. He carried command like armor, but she had seen his hand shake once when the child went quiet. She had seen him choose this ditch over the clinic and then absorb the consequences without complaint, as if pain was just part of the uniform. She rose and walked to him while Nate took over warming checks. "You heard Pine Ridge?" she asked. Jeff nodded. "Yeah. If I had stayed on the bike, maybe I'd be there now. Maybe I'd prevent a crash in Ward B." She gave a short, bitter breath. "And if I had stayed on the bike, this girl might be dead in that van." Rain beaded on his jaw scar. He looked at her then, direct and unguarded. "You made the right call." Maria almost laughed. "I've said that to families for 15 years. Never once believed it in my own bones." Her throat tightened unexpectedly, and she hated it. Hated crying in weather, in front of riders, in front of a man who looked at her like she was steadier than she felt. "I am so tired," she said quietly. "Not physically, morally. Tired of deciding who gets to be unlucky tonight." Jeff's expression softened in a way that had nothing to do with command. "You're not deciding who's unlucky. You're deciding who gets a chance." She shook her head, eyes bright. "Do you know why I volunteer these night runs? It's not charity. It's penance." He waited. "My younger brother died during a winter outage in New Mexico. Rural clinic, no transfer available, no physician on site for 40 minutes. I was in med school, 3 states away, memorizing pathways while he suffocated in a room that lost power." She looked toward the dark road where sirens kept failing to appear on time. "Every delay since then feels personal." For a moment, she thought she'd said too much. Then Jeff reached out. Not dramatic, just a gloved hand touching her sleeve above the wrist. Solid, warm even through wet leather. "We carry ghosts for fuel," he said. "Just don't let them steer." She breathed in, shaky, then steadier. "If this goes wrong, if that man gets near her, I'm not standing behind policy." "Good," Jeff said. "Neither am I." Ranger barked once, sharp as a snapped wire. Both of them turned. The pickup came back with intent this time. No slow roll-by, no hesitation. It pulled onto the shoulder 20 yards beyond the flare line and killed its lights, engine idling low. Driver door opened. A man in a dark work jacket stepped out. Mid-30s, maybe. Clean boots despite the mud, hair slicked by rain. He held one hand up like he was the calmest person here. "Lily," he called toward the tarp. "Lily, it's me. Emma, baby. Daddy's here." The girl in the blankets made a small choking sound and tried to curl into Ranger. Her oxygen mask shifted as she shook her head frantically. "No," she whispered. Barely audible. Then louder, panicked. "No, no, no." That was enough for Jeff. "Wall up!" he shouted. 6 bikes swung in practiced arcs, engines snarling, front wheels angled to form a steel barrier between tarp and pickup. Floodlights snapped on full and washed the truck in hard white. Kira finally got what she needed. "Plate red," she yelled. "County tag 7FQ-219. Murphy repeated it into 2 recording devices and dispatched simultaneously. Deputy Weller moved toward the man anyway. "Sir, identify yourself." "Caleb Trent," the man said, producing a wallet and what looked like registration paperwork. "That is my wife and daughter. These bikers are blocking me from my family." He pitched his voice perfectly. Worried husband, reasonable citizen, aggrieved but controlled. He didn't look at Jeff once. He looked at Hall, at the uniforms, at the system he trusted to recognize him as rightful. Hall stepped between both sides, rain dripping off his hat brim. "Sir, stay where you are." "I just want to see my little girl," Caleb said, taking 1 step forward. Ranger exploded into barking, teeth bared, leashless and ferocious. The sound ripped through the scene. "Back!" Nate shouted, tightening hold on the child. Jeff moved to Hall's shoulder. "She verbalized threat. Child is in active panic response. You put him near that stretcher, and you own what happens." Hall's face went granite. Weller looked uncertain, eyes bouncing between the crying child and the man with paperwork. Then dispatch crackled over Hall's radio. "Sergeant, be advised additional units diverted to structure fire. You are primary on scene for minimum 30. 30 more minutes, no backup, 1 manipulative claimant, 1 unstable medical scene, 1 wounded rider, and an ambulance crew already trying to load out." Caleb lifted his voice, sharper now. "Officer, they are kidnapping my family in front of you." Paramedic team started rolling the woman toward the stretcher. Caleb lunged 2 steps as if to follow. Jeff stepped into his path. For a heartbeat, the 2 men stood close enough to smell each other's rain and rage. Behind Jeff, engines idled in a growling line. Beside him, Maria stripped off one glove and raised her phone camera with a hand that no longer shook. Hall barked, "Everybody hold position!" No one did. Caleb's hand dropped toward his jacket pocket as floodlights flared brighter, reflecting off something metallic he started to pull free. Caleb's hand dropped toward his jacket pocket as floodlights flared brighter, reflecting off something metallic he started to pull free. It wasn't a gun. It was a lug wrench, short, heavy, one end wrapped in black tape for grip. He swung it in a tight arc toward Jeff's head. Jeff jerked back on instinct, the wrench glancing off his shoulder plate instead of his temple with a crack like a bat on a fence post. Pain burst hot down his arm. He stayed upright. "Weapon!" Weller shouted. Hall drew but didn't fire. Too many people, too close, too much movement. Caleb reset for another swing, face gone from worried father mask to naked fury. "You don't keep my kid from me." Before he could close again, Maria stepped into the light, phone camera raised, voice cutting through engines and rain. "Sergeant Hall, this man just attacked in front of deputies. Child victim is in acute terror response to his presence. I am Dr. Maria Alvarez, licensed physician, mandated reporter. I am making a formal on-scene statement. This is a high-risk domestic violence situation." Caleb turned toward her. "Shut your mouth." She didn't flinch. "No." He moved as if to lunge around Jeff toward the stretcher. Jeff planted a boot in his path and drove him back with both forearms. The lug wrench clanged off Jeff's ribs this time, knocking wind out of him. Riders surged forward 2 steps, then held when Hall bellowed, "Stand down!" "Drop it, Caleb!" Hall shouted. "Now!" Caleb backed toward his pickup instead, wrench still up, eyes darting for openings in the bike wall. Behind the barrier, Emma, because now they knew her name, was full panic, crying into Ranger's neck, oxygen mask fogging in sharp bursts. Maria moved to her immediately, one hand steadying the mask, the other never lowering her phone. "Emma, look at me," she said, calm and exact. "You are not going with him tonight. You hear me? Not tonight." The child nodded against the dog's soaked fur, fingers white in Ranger's coat. Caleb heard it. Something in him snapped. He rushed the bike wall, shoved at Kira's handlebars, and got a knee onto the frame of the nearest motorcycle, like he meant to climb over steel and people both. Jeff caught him by the jacket and yanked him down. They hit the wet asphalt hard, wrench skittering away under a cruiser bumper. Caleb fought dirty. Thumb in eye socket, elbow to throat, heel stamping for knees. Jeff absorbed, redirected, drove him flat, but Caleb was wiry and frantic and fueled by possession, not sense. They rolled through flare smoke and rain sheen, boots slipping, fists thudding into leather and bone. "Jeff, left," Murphy yelled. Too late. Caleb's fist caught Jeff across the scarred jaw. White light flashed. Jeff answered with a short body shot that folded Caleb enough for Hall and Weller to close in. "Hands! Hands where I can see!" Weller shouted, wrestling for wrists. Caleb bucked free of one grip, grabbed road grit, and threw mud into Weller's face. He almost got to his knees. Maria stepped in again, not with force, with precision. She kicked the lug wrench farther under the cruiser, where no one could grab it, then shouted, loud and clear for every body cam and phone mic, "Sergeant, he used force to access a protected medical scene after being warned. Child has made refusal in his presence. Victim statement indicates pursuit. If you release him, you are releasing to probable lethality." Hall's eyes snapped to her, then to Emma, sobbing, "No, Daddy, no. then to Jeff, bleeding through his sleeve and still pinning Caleb's shoulder with one arm. Decision made. Caleb Trent, you are under arrest for assault, obstruction, and reckless endangerment pending further investigation. Hall barked, "Stop resisting." Caleb didn't. He twisted, got one hand free, and reached for Hall's holster. Everything stopped for half a heartbeat. Then Jeff slammed his forearm across Caleb's biceps, trapping the reach. Hall drove a knee into Caleb's hip to break leverage. Weller got cuffs onto one wrist, then the other, ratcheting tight over muddy skin. Caleb screamed profanity, kicked at Jeff's shin, and spat toward Maria. It landed short. "You think paper saves them?" he snarled, hauled upright by both deputies. "You think hiding works? I always find—" Hall shoved him into the cruiser door. "Finish that sentence in my car and add terroristic threats to your night." Caleb kept shouting anyway, voice muffled as they forced him into the back seat, then still audible through glass. "Lily! Emma! They're lying to you." Emma buried her face in Ranger and shook so hard Maria had to brace her shoulders to keep her from sliding off the bench. Maria leaned close, voice low enough to cut through the panic spiral. "Listen to me. He cannot touch you. Look at my hand, in and out. Good. Again." She breathed with the girl until the trembling eased from violent to manageable. Across the shoulder, Jeff stood bent, one hand on his thigh, the other pressed to his side where Caleb had connected with the wrench. Rain ran pink from a cut on his knuckles. Kira came up with a trauma dressing. "You good?" she asked. "I'm standing." "That wasn't the question." Jeff glanced at Emma, at Lily on the gurney, at the cruiser with Caleb pounding once against the partition, before Hall told him to stop. "Yeah," Jeff said hoarsely. "Now I am." The defeat didn't stick cleanly. Caleb switched tactics as soon as the cuffs clicked. Gone was rage, back came control. He sat straighter in the cruiser, asked for his attorney, demanded medical records sealed, insisted Lily had a head injury, and was confused, called Night Watch a vigilante gang, accused Maria of practicing outside authorized sight. Hall took it all down without expression. "Statement noted," he said each time. Then Dispatch dumped another problem onto the shoulder. Because Caleb's registration was now tied to an injured family member, an on-call county social worker called Hall directly and asked if father should accompany pediatric transport. Maria heard it over speaker and strode over before Hall answered. "Put me on," she said. Hall hesitated, then handed the phone. "This is Dr. Alvarez," she said, voice razor flat. "Minor patient is medically unstable and actively distressed by suspect presence. Suspect is under arrest following violent assault at scene. Any recommendation for contact tonight should be documented under your name and license with awareness of acute risk and ongoing criminal investigation." A beat of silence. Then the social worker, suddenly cautious. "Understood. No contact recommendation at this time pending report." Maria handed the phone back. "Thank you." Caleb saw that from the cruiser and kicked the door again. "Lily!" he shouted through cracked rear window. Tell them I take care of you." On the gurney, Lily stirred for the first time since her collapse and turned her face away from the sound, eyes still closed. Not confusion, Jeff thought. Recognition. The ambulance crew tried to load fast, but Caleb wasn't done escalating. He started slamming his cuffed wrists against the window divider, yelling that he was injured, demanding EMS assessment, trying to force resource diversion and delay transport. Weller cursed under his breath. "He'll split his own scalp if we ignore it," Weller said. "Then we process him after patient's roll," Hall answered. "He waits." He might have caved 10 minutes earlier. Now, with assault witnessed, child panic on multiple cameras, and Maria's formal statement in his ear, he didn't. Jeff stepped to Hall with the evidence sleeve held chest high. Before they move, Jeff said, breathing tight through rib pain, I need this logged on camera. Victim quote, prior petition denial, shelter intake, suspicious vehicle pass, and this plate. Hall nodded once and motioned Weller to body cam close. Recording, Weller said. Jeff spoke clearly despite the ache in his jaw. At approximately 0238, victim Lily Trent regained consciousness and stated, quote, he found us. Prior to that statement, we recovered legal documents from victim coat pocket indicating emergency protection petition denied yesterday and shelter intake initiated today. At approximately 0220 and 0247, dark pickup, plate 7 Foxtrot Queen 219, surveilled scene. At 0251, driver identified as Caleb Trent attempted forced entry to medical perimeter and assaulted rescue personnel with metal lug wrench. Murphy stepped in with timestamps and still photos. Kira added her plate read. Maria added child response. Hall ended the recording and signed the evidence chain form from Night Watch's incident kit. I am taking custody of originals, he said for camera. Case number 24-10-8831. Copies remain with reporting parties. Jeff handed over the sleeve only after Hall repeated the number. Then came the hard line he'd promised himself. The paramedic at Lily's stretcher reached for the latch. We need to move. You will, Jeff said. With deputy escort and destination noted as Safe Harbor Partner Hospital in Dalton County, not local ER. The medic frowned. We usually route nearest trauma. Maria stepped up. Nearest trauma has open access waiting room and no guaranteed protective intake. I'm attending physician on scene, and I'm requesting protective transfer. Due credible threat. I will ride with pediatric and mother. You can refuse and explain to your medical director why. The medic held her gaze, then looked at Emma, clutching Ranger, then at cruiser-bound Caleb, still shouting through glass. Fine, he said. Dalton County, but we roll now. Ranger comes too, Emma whispered fiercely. First clear, full sentence. We can't, the medic started. You can, Maria cut in. He is the only effective calming anchor she has right now. Jeff didn't argue. He opened the rear ambulance door himself and lifted Ranger in. The dog settled by Emma's boots as if he'd trained for it. Santos, pale and sweating on the guardrail with a splinted leg, gave Jeff a two-finger salute. Take the package, he grunted. I got second rig. Jeff crouched long enough to squeeze his shoulder. You're not optional either. Yeah. Go. As doors slammed, Hall pointed at two deputies who had finally arrived from another beat. You escort that ambulance to county line and don't lose it. Then, quieter to Jeff. I should have pushed back on dispatch sooner. Jeff nodded, not absolving, not condemning. Push now. Hall looked toward his cruiser where Caleb had gone from shouting to cold silence, eyes fixed on the ambulance lights. I intend to, he said. The immediate aftermath felt unreal because motion replaced impact. Engines reignited in sequence, Night Watch split by plan. Half stayed with Santos and crash scene turnover, half formed around the ambulance in staggered protective pattern. Jeff took point again, shoulder throbbing, every gear change. Rain thinned to mist as they crossed into Dalton County, and the road opened into long, dark stretches of farm fence and sleeping houses. Inside the ambulance, Maria sat braced between Lily's monitor and Emma's bench, one hand on each. Emma finally drifted when Ranger pressed his head into her lap and stayed. Lily came awake once long enough to whisper, Did he? And Maria answered, He's in custody, before she slipped under analgesia. At 4:07 a.m., Safe Harbor's secure intake gate rolled open. Not a hospital entrance with bright glass and wandering visitors. A coated steel gate, two staff in plain clothes and windows that did not advertise occupancy. Jeff killed his bike and felt his body register damage all at once. Ribs burning, shoulders stiffening, knuckles swelling. He ignored all of it until he saw Emma wheel through the gate, still clutching Ranger's collar, and Lily transferred inside under a temporary alias Asha had arranged en route. Asha Patel herself appeared in the intake corridor, hair in a knot, laptop under one arm. "You got me a live suspect, documented threat, and admissible chain," she said to Jeff and Maria without preamble. "Judges are hard at dawn, but not impossible." "Make impossible somebody else's problem," Jeff said. Asha gave the nearest thing she had to a smile. "On it." She handed Maria two forms: medical confidentiality lock and emergency guardian privacy. "Sign here and here." Maria signed, then paused. "Child's preferred guardian animal included?" Asha checked a box. "Already added." Ranger thumped his tail once against the linoleum like approval. Out in the lot, Jeff finally keyed his radio for Pine Ridge. "Kira, status clinic." Static, then Kira's tired voice from miles away. "Generator failed 20 minutes ago, but utility crew made temp patch from substation after Alvarez's call list. Ward stayed ventilated. No fatalities." "Repeating, no fatalities." Jeff exhaled so hard it hurt. "Copy." He leaned against his bike as dawn began to gray the eastern edge of the sky. For the first time since the dog hit his headlight, no one was actively drowning, bleeding out, or charging a barricade. Crisis mode loosened. Not gone, never gone, but loosened. Maria came out 10 minutes later with paper wristbands cut off and a smear of dried blood still at her jawline where she hadn't noticed. "They're in secured beds," she said. Emma asked if Ranger could sleep on the blanket. Staff said yes. Jeff closed his eyes briefly in relief. She studied him. "You need your ribs looked at." "You sound like a doctor." "I sound like a woman who watched you eat a lug wrench." He gave a tired huff that might have been a laugh. Silence settled between them, not awkward, just full. Parking lot lights clicked off one by one as daylight grew. Then Maria said softly, "When he came back, I thought I was going to freeze. Like before. Like every time policy won." "You didn't freeze," Jeff said. "No." She met his gaze. "I didn't." They sat on the curb beside Jeff's bike with gas station coffee and paper cups that tasted like burnt pennies. Murphy had finally gone with the second convoy. Hall had left messages about follow-up interviews. The world was still spinning paperwork into consequence. For once, nobody needed Jeff in the next 60 seconds. Maria wrapped both hands around her cup and stared at the steam. "Can I tell you something without you turning it into command language?" Jeff angled toward her. "Try me." She took a breath. "I noticed you months ago." He blinked. "At the free clinic run?" "At the tornado supply run. You came in soaked, carried 6 cases of insulin like they weighed nothing, and told everyone else to eat before you did." She smiled faintly. "You looked terrifying. Then you handed your dry gloves to an old man with tremors and pretended you didn't." Jeff looked down at his scarred hands. "I'm not easy to read." "You are to me." That landed harder than the wrench. She kept going, voice steady now that she'd started. "I've stayed professional, because I thought anything else was a distraction. I told myself that if I kept distance, I could keep people alive and keep my grief compartmentalized and keep my history from touching anyone new." Her fingers tightened around the cup. "Tonight proved distance is a fantasy." We are already in each other's hardest nights." He didn't answer quickly. Wind moved through the lot, lifting the loose hair at her temple. Finally, he said, "I noticed you before that." She turned. "When?" "Fundraiser poker run. Spring. You were in the back of the community hall arguing with a county rep about after-hours transport access. You were polite for the first 2 minutes, then you went full scalpel." A ghost of a smile tugged his bruised mouth. I thought, well, there's the only person in this room scarier than me. She laughed, surprised and wet-eyed at once. His expression sobered. "I kept it locked down because people around me get used hard by the work. I know how to run toward wreckage. I don't know how to ask somebody to stand near it with me." Maria set her cup down on the pavement. "Then don't ask me to stand near it. Ask me to stand in it. That's where I am anyway." He looked at her for a long moment, as if checking for exits, and finding none he wanted. "I don't do halfway," he said quietly. "If this is us, it's us when calls come at 2 a.m. and when hearings drag for months and when we're both too tired to be charming. It's ugly schedules and hard truths and occasionally blood on our boots." "Good," she said. "I'm done with halfway too." He swallowed once, jaw tightening. "I was scared tonight. Not of him. Of losing you in the middle of all that noise and not having had the guts to say any of this." Maria reached out and touched the edge of his cut where rain had darkened the leather. "I was scared of becoming someone who only survives by staying numb. And you make me feel dangerously, inconveniently alive." That did it. Jeff laughed, soft, disbelieving, and then leaned in. The kiss was gentle at first because both of them were bruised and exhausted, and still half in triage brain. Then it deepened, with all the restraint they'd been hauling around for months. When they broke, he rested his forehead against hers. "Okay," he said, voice rough. "Then here's truth. I want you in my life on purpose. Not only because we're good in a crisis, because when this is over, I still look for you in a room." Maria's eyes filled and she didn't look away. "Then stop looking. I'm right here." He threaded his fingers through hers, careful of scraped knuckles. Inside the shelter, a child laughed once in her sleep. Small, surprised, safe. Maria squeezed his hand. "One more truth?" "Yeah. If you ever try to protect me by shutting me out, I will personally run over your boot with my bike." He grinned despite cracked lip. "Noted, Doctor." "Partner," she corrected. Jeff nodded, like taking an oath. "Partner." They sat there until the sun cleared the low roofline, hands linked, neither pretending this would be easy and neither wanting anything easier. 48 hours later, the courtroom annex smelled like old paper and coffee. Asha stood beside Lily, arm in sling, temple stitched, voice still hoarse but steady, while Emma colored at a side table with the ranger's head on her sneaker. Jeff and Maria waited on the back bench in civilian jackets, looking out of place and exactly where they needed to be. Judge Marin scanned the packet Asha had built overnight. Body cam footage, helmet cam clips from 6 angles, dispatch logs, Hall's arrest report, Maria's sworn statement, photos of bruises old and new, and the denial petition that had almost buried the case. "Emergency order granted," the judge said, pen striking paper. "No contact. No approach within 1,000 feet. Temporary custody with petitioner pending full hearing." Lily let out a breath like she'd been underwater for years. Outside the annex doors, Hall caught Jeff's shoulder. "Warrants on Trent expanded this morning. Tracking device found under the van chassis during forensic tow, plus prior DV call from another county he forgot to mention. Your footage made the DA move faster than I've seen. Jeff nodded. Good. Hall looked like he wanted to say more, then settled for, I watched all 6 camera feeds. You were right to hold that line. Across the hall, Santos wheeled past in a borrowed chair, leg in a hard cast, flipping everyone off cheerfully. I leave you people alone one night. Maria laughed and bent to sign his cast, where 10 other signatures already crowded the plaster. By evening, local news ran synchronized clips. The dog in the beam, the broken guardrail, the rescue, the attempted breach, the arrest. Not sensational music, raw timestamps, hard facts. County commissioners who had ignored maintenance requests for missing mile markers suddenly found budget room at an emergency meeting while residents packed the chamber and refused to leave quietly. Jeff stood at the back with Murphy as a road engineer clicked through new sign placements on a projector. Marker posts every quarter mile by winter, the engineer said into microphone. Reflective IDs tied to dispatch GIS. Murphy nudged Jeff. Took a ditch and a near kidnapping, but hey, progress. On the agenda after that came a line item nobody had expected 6 months ago. Night watch, ditch protocol integration for volunteer first response until official units arrive. Maria spoke during public comment in plain language that made bureaucrats sit up. Protocols are not abstract, she said. They are the difference between a child breathing at dawn and a condolence call by noon. She finished. The room stayed quiet for half a beat. Then applause broke from the back rows and spread. At dawn, a week later, wind hit hard over County 14 again. Jeff rolled to the front of a night watch training convoy, same worn cut, same scar, same road, but this time reflective mile marker signs flashed in his headlight. 14.25, 14.50, 14.75, bright and impossible to miss. Kira rode left flank. Santos castrated for brace, rode tail, and complained theatrically over comms about weather. Maria rode beside Jeff on her own bike now, visor down, posture relaxed and ready. Not passenger, partner. They slowed near the repaired guardrail at Miller's Creek, where fresh gravel still showed pale against the old asphalt. Jeff raised a fist. Engines dropped to idle in clean unison. On the bank below, 2 shelter staff waited, with Emma and Lily for a planned transport drill. Rangers sat between them, ears up, eyes bright. Emma wore a helmet way too big and grinned when she saw the bikes. Jeff killed his engine and listened to the wind for a moment. The night that almost swallowed them had become a map, a protocol, a promise. Maria nudged his shoulder with hers. You scanning darkness again, Bennett? Always, he said. She smiled. Good. I'll scan with you. He looked at the ditch, then at the road ahead, lined with new markers, then at the people gathered on both shoulders who had made it through. Night watch, he called over comms, voice steady, caring. Run starts now. Engines answered, not as noise, but as a vow.